All right, I'm hoping that people can hear me. I'm going to wait to get confirmation because I've got somebody watching nearby. I'm still facing south. And I'll just improvise while we're waiting. Facing south, following the Big Dipper's arc to Arcturus, we start with the Big Dipper's handle, which has not, well, the Big Dipper itself has not 7 stars, but 8. And if I were to zoom in, you would see that there is a double star here. So if you have keen eyesight, you too could be asked to keep watch over the campfire first, as penalty for being able to see 8 stars in the Big Dipper. Facing south once again, we can arc along the Big Dipper's handle to Arcturus, very bright orange colored star, and then speed to Spica, blue colored star. So your eyes can tell star temperatures. Cooler than the sun, Arcturus. Spica, hotter than the sun. Keep going south and you'll come to small constellations, Corvus and Crater, which look exactly like a crow in a cup, right? Don't see it? Neither do I. Sea serpent down below, Hydra. Now, if you take a look over towards the southeast where the new stars are coming up, the new stars of summer, and the moon, unfortunately, which will be interfering with things, we can find a person holding the head and tail of Serpens, the snake. And this is Ophiuchus, the serpent bearer, the guy who carries the serpents. Now, 3,000 years ago, the sun, moon, and planets did not move through this area of the sky because as the Earth wobbles, it changes a little bit the constellations that the sun passes through. But now, the sun, moon, and planets do pass through part of Ophiuchus. And so I call this the 13th sign of the zodiac. Astrologers do not recognize it as such. Now, let's say you could stay up a little bit later, beyond 10 o'clock. You would see the moon rising, and 2 of the greatest of the gas giant planets in our solar system, Jupiter and Saturn. And here we are at about 1 in the morning, with unfortunately the nearly full moon, the waning gibbous moon. As the parts of the moon disappear on the right, the moon is heading towards the morning sun. It's on the wane, but it's still bright enough to ruin our view of the sky at 1 o'clock in the morning. However, even small telescopes could get a good view of the planets because they're so bright. If we zoom in on Jupiter in a small telescope, we can notice, as did Galileo 400 years ago, that there are little stars following Jupiter, the 4 large moons, Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto. In a small telescope, we can see cloudy bands. This is truly a giant world, 11 Earths across in size. Sometimes you can see the shadow of a moon on the surface of Jupiter, on the clouds. Jupiter has no solid surface. Right nearby, the ringed planet Saturn. Let's take a look and see what that looks like tonight. You see how much you have to zoom in to see anything at all. All right, so these things are tiny in angular size. Saturn has many moons, including the giant Titan, which has an atmosphere, very cold atmosphere of methane. We're not sure if there are some kind of living creatures on the surface. that would live in very, very cold, slow environment. Saturn and its rings, it's wide open now. But as Saturn goes around the sun, about every 29 years, and the Earth follows it, the rings will appear open and then closed and thin, which time they disappear because they are so thin, only about 10 meters thick or so, less than a mile for sure. So those are planets, and you can tell them apart from stars because they don't twinkle. Generally not. Although this low in the sky, coming through a lot of atmosphere, there might be some kind of interference. Later on, next month, in What's Up in the July Sky, we'll be talking about other constellations that come up. This is my sign here, kind of like a triangle. It's the sea goat Capricornus. And it was supposed to be the sign under which I was born. That is, the sun was there when I was born, except it wasn't. It was over here. Because the Earth has wobbled in 3,000 years since astrology got started, the sun signs are off by the entire constellation. But this was traditionally my sign. And we'll take a look at that next time. So, quick review. Facing south, follow the arc to Arcturus from the Big Dipper. Speed to Spica. And later on, we'll be talking about a famous hero. And actually, it's still a good time of year, no matter what time of night you observe, to look for globular clusters. M3 is in close by, but a famous globular cluster, the one most easily seen from the northern hemisphere, the New Jersey, looks like a fuzzy cloud in binoculars. In large telescopes, you can see hundreds of stars, and there are actually 500,000 in this great globular cluster in Hercules, the hero. Try it out if you have a pair of binoculars. See if you can find the great cluster M13. It's in a quadrilateral shape like a keystone, also called the keystone, in Hercules. Poor Hercules is depicted in traditional art as upside down, and this is his head star. Whoops, sorry. Somewhere in there is his head star. I believe this one is it, Corniferous. But, you know, in the real sky, we don't have pictures, right? We don't have lines. So it takes a bit of practice to recognize stars this way. And if you have a star chart, it's even harder because everything is really small, right? I can recognize the Big Dipper. In the Little Dipper, you'll see 3 stars generally with our light pollution in most areas. And that's why I urge all of you to visit the United Astronomy Clubs of New Jersey observatories in Hope, one of the darkest sites in this area. This is Stellarium. And now I'd like to go back to what's up in the sky. New planets, we can actually see them orbiting other stars. These knots of gas are where planets are forming. They're bigger than Jupiter, 4 times or 3 times Jupiter's mass, 2 or 3 times the size of Jupiter, but their orbits are similar to the size of the orbits of our outer planets. This is about the size of the orbit of Neptune in our solar system. Neptune, compared to Uranus, compared to Saturn, compared to Jupiter, their orbits are so large that we can't even see the orbit of Mars at this scale. Mars and the inner planets Earth, Venus, Mercury, almost hidden in the glare of the sun. The Very Large Telescope, boy, that's another scientific term, has taken great pictures of AB Aurigae in Auriga, the chariot rider. Young stars, hot stars forming planets. And again, this is about 30 astronomical units, about the size of Neptune's orbit. Right about in here, these knots are planets forming. So to quick review before we stop, June 4th, Mercury was at its greatest eastern elongation from the sun, seen at after sunset. See if you can see the most elusive of the inner planets, Mercury and Venus. Mercury by Gemini, the twins. Look for globular clusters M13 near the herdsman Boötes with the bright star Arcturus, making a triangle with Arcturus, the side of Boötes, and here. This is a good place to look for galaxies as well. When you do visit Jenny Jump observatories and Hope again, ask the amateur astronomers to show you in the spring and summer, to show you the galaxies that are far from our own Milky Way. So how do you get started? What's a good way? Binoculars. Easy to remember, binoculars.com. There's great articles about binoculars and telescopes in Sky and Telescope magazine, which is also online. How to choose your first telescope. But, you know, what's the best way to get started? The naked eye. That's how I got started. I ripped the centerfolds out of, nope, not the magazines you were thinking of, Astronomy and Sky and Telescope. What's not up in the sky? Buinis, Aquarium, O'Brien. This is from a brilliant book written by Tom Weller, Science Made Stupid. It's long out of print, but you can find it on eBay. You can find the whole thing, most of it, online, free. Look it up, Science Made Stupid, where scientists measure things with right ascension and wrong ascension. So, quick recap. Western sky, Leo, Gemini disappearing. Southern sky at 9 p.m. The middle of the month, look for the arc of the Big Dipper Santa to Arcturus, speed to Spica. Find the crow and the cup. Over to the left, Hercules, and the guy who's holding the snake, Ophiuchus the serpent holder. Serpent's caput, head, serpent's cauda, tail. It's broken up into two parts. And you should also look for one of the first stars of summer, Vega, bright bluish star. Later on at night. Oh, actually, I indicated the position of one of the bright asteroids. There are 4 that were discovered first: Ceres, Pallas, Juno, and Vesta. This is one of them, and it's actually close by in this part of the sky. So this is facing south, 9 o'clock, and that is what's up in the sky. So we've got some homework for you. Go to UACNJ.org, United Astronomy Clubs. That's our website. Lots of good resources there, as well as upcoming events, pictures of our observatories. Look for magazines. They still have these in print. Sky and Telescope, Astronomy, good for lay people like us, lay amateur astronomers. We do it for love, not money. Free programs, Stellarium, Celestia, and Skyview, and many others are free apps for your phone. You can hold your phone up to the sky. Your GPS figures out where you're looking. It tells you what you're looking at. I belong to an association of astronomical artists where there is a link also to my website, astronomyinmotion.com, where you can see a picture of me and Jan at Niagara Falls. And also at that site, I advertise my book, Space History Mystery Solved, the first interactive astronomical history book that solves 4 famous astronomical mysteries, available everywhere. And in that book, we use virtual reality models like this one of the planet Mars. This is one I just made last week, where you can use fingers to move the object in 3D and even zoom in to see the biggest volcanic structure in the solar system, a giant shield volcano and others nearby, Olympus Mons, named for the home of the Greek gods. So if you have fingers or a pointing device, you can manipulate Mars in 3 dimensions, and other models are on my website, astronomyinmotion.com. I'm going to pause to see if anyone has any questions. I want to thank you for being such a good audience, and while we're waiting for posts, I can bring up Celestia, which is a program that lets you fly through space and see what things look like from the moon or from one of Saturn's moons. It's really fun, and best of all, it's free. There's the Earth. We can move around it. We can see the night lights of Earth caused by cities, right? We can go places. Want to go to Saturn? There's a solar system browser that lets you look at Saturn as seen from its moon Titan, for instance, and which is not working tonight, like other things. A little bit frustrating. Let's see if that works again. Saturn. Oh, I see what happened. Let's go to the giant moon, Titan, which I mentioned may have some kind of hypometabolic life, living very slowly in the extreme conditions of cold. We can't see the surface of Titan. It's covered with thick clouds. But if we look carefully, we might be able to see the planet that it orbits, Saturn. And from Titan, Saturn's rings would appear as a thin line. We couldn't even see them. I'm going to turn off the orbits so we can get a better look at the rings of Saturn and see how thin they are. There are many controls here. We can zoom into Titan, we can zoom into Saturn. Lots of stuff you can do in Celestia. And best of all, it's free. Well, you've been a very patient audience. A lot of things went wrong tonight. Hopefully, I'm planning next time to do things a little differently. And so with that, I'm going to wait to see if there are any questions for the next couple of minutes before we sign off and say thanks for being part of the UACNJ series, What's Up in the Sky. There are other people who talk on other Saturday nights, so do stop by and check out other talks about black holes, other planets, gravity wave observatories, relativity, all sorts of cool things. I'm going to leave up some homework for you. All right, once again, I apologize for our technical difficulties. Next, What's Up in the Sky happens in the first weekend in July. And then we'll be doing things a little bit differently. Thank you all. This is Lonny Buinis signing off, and I look forward to seeing you in person when everything reopens. I look forward to seeing all of you again online. Have a good night. It's computing. We are live. All right, testing. We'll be beginning shortly at 8 o'clock with What's Up in the June Sky. All right, everyone, we're back. We're just going to pause for a few moments so people can catch up because I had to restart. And we're going to be doing What's Up in the June Sky. Hold on for an introduction.
Good evening, everyone. Space artist and animator Lonny Buinis has been presenting What's Up in the Sky since the United Astronomy Clubs of New Jersey opened in 1994. In April 2016, the UACNJ dedicated the Lonny Buinis Observatory. Our speaker has been an amateur astronomer since age 10, holds degrees from Stevens Institute of Technology in Physics and Computer Science, and is a member of the International Association of Astronomical Artists. Lonny wrote the first interactive space history mystery book, which contains movies narrated by the wonderful Jan Buinis. We'll now take an interactive tour of the June sky. It's a good time of year to see stars of different colors, star clusters, and the 13th sign of the zodiac. The smartest thing Lonny ever did was marry the narrator of his book, who helps keep his head from floating off and becoming a diffuse nebula. Have a great evening.
Thank you, Jan Buinis, and welcome everyone to the United Astronomy Clubs of New Jersey, an umbrella organization of many New Jersey astronomical societies. If you belong to one, then you may eventually be able to observe at the UACNJ one of the darkest sites in the state of New Jersey, if not the darkest observing site in the state. Tonight we're going to look at what's up in the June sky, and here we have a picture of a cluster of stars that form a globe. I'm going to let you guess what astronomers call that. Its scientific term, because it's kind of fun to guess how astronomers name things. A giant cluster of stars in a big globe shape. If you were to visit the UACNJ, which I like to pronounce UACNJ, you could visit either online or in person once things open up again. We are always online at uacnj.org. And we would ask you to look through the various telescopes of the amateur astronomers at the multiple observatories that have been installed at UACNJ, in Jenny Jump, in Hope, New Jersey. We're open every Saturday evening, April through October, and there are many other talks besides my own What's Up series, which we've been doing for now the 26th year. First, let's see something that's been approved for all audiences, so you kids can hang out and see what's coming up in the sky, which would be available to everybody if you go to csky.org. csky.org has all kinds of events on the Earth and in space, and what you can do is either go directly to this link. I see a lot of you are taking notes furiously, writing all this stuff down, or photographing your screens. Do we say photograph anymore? Is that just for old people? Well, if you go to the site, you can find the astronomy calendar for this particular month by clicking at csky.org on Explore the Sky, and then scroll down to the Astronomy Reference Guide. Click on Astronomical Calendar on the left, and then you have a choice of years going back into the past and forward into the future. Click on 2020, and you'll see a series of links like this. Now, lest you be confused, this is not a picture of Mercury. Which planet is this? Anyone? Don't all speak at once. The planet Jupiter is used for any planetary event in this calendar. So June 4th was Mercury at its greatest eastern elongation away from the sun. And that means that if you looked in the west when the sun was setting, Mercury would be to the left or the east in the opposite direction. Yesterday, the moon was full, which is the absolute worst time to look at sky objects, especially faint objects that are far away from us amongst the stars of the Milky Way galaxy. Astronomers call that by a very scientific term, deep sky objects. And so this is not a good night to be looking at faint objects, but you can try any other night and the moon eventually will leave the sky. The full moon now has also been known as the strawberry moon. It was a time of year to gather ripe fruit to the early Native Americans. Also, yesterday, there was an eclipse of the moon, penumbral eclipse, just entering the Earth's shadow partially, just a little bit. You can actually see the curvature of the Earth as the moon enters its shadow. And this is something that the ancient Greeks figured out long ago, thousands of years ago. They knew that the Earth was round, contrary to the beliefs of the Flat Earth Society. June 21st, the moon is new. Now, what does that mean? That means that as the moon approaches the area of the sky where the sun is, the source of light is going to be closer and closer to behind it, right? The moon looks about the same size as the sun, but the sun is 400 times further away from us than the moon, while the moon is 400 times smaller than the sun. An interesting coincidence. But the moon is not going to be interfering around the latter part of the month with viewing objects in the sky. Good time to look at the sky, especially faint objects, new moon. And for you arithmeticians in the audience, you can convert universal time, UTC, by subtracting 4 hours. So at 2:42 in the morning, the moon is new here in New Jersey. June 21st is another solar eclipse. Angular means the moon doesn't quite cover the sun, but it's not visible from New Jersey, so we'll skip that. June 20th, solstice. What is that? That's the furthest point that the sun can appear high in our sky. Days are longest, and the north pole of the Earth, which is tilted to the orbit of the Earth around the sun by about 23.5 degrees, causes these seasonal changes. Oddly enough, we are also furthest from the sun during the solstice. So why aren't we cold? Why don't we have winter in the northern hemisphere? Well, the seasons are really caused by the tilt of the Earth, not so much the distance of the Earth from the sun, which varies slightly. Also, June 20th is very important. It's my wife's birthday. So this is the most important event, celestial or otherwise. And lest I forget it, I gave myself a nice reminder. The picture you saw at the very start of tonight's presentation was a globular cluster. Yes, you guessed it. Astronomers call a globe of stars in a cluster a globular cluster. Ingenious, these astronomers. What will they think of next? These are number in the hundreds of thousands. And if you lived on a planet that orbited one of these older stars, redder stars, been around a lot longer than the sun, your night sky would never allow you to see deep sky objects. It would be like looking at a sky full of street lights. Let's take a look at the sky, however, in a little bit different way. Instead of just looking at still images, let's interactively explore the sky with a program called Stellarium. And this will run on any PC, any Mac. It's free, it's open source, they're improving it forever. It's free forever. And right now it's in version 0.20, whatever that means. Another great program that you can find is Celestia. Google it or DuckDuckGo it. It's a way to fly through the solar system and see what things look like from other things, like Saturn's rings from one of its moons. If there's time at the end, we'll take a quick tour of the solar system with Celestia. Stellarium is a program that lets you see what the sky looks like from anywhere on the Earth, anytime in the past or future. And we're going to see what the Earth sky looks like from Jenny Jump, from the United Astronomy Club's location in Hope. Now, this is a simulated sky. You can zoom in and zoom out. You can face different directions. Guess what these letters are for? Right? The first place you want to look is in the west, W, because as the Earth rotates, right, it spins once a day, the sky seems to move from left to right as we face south. And so everything's going to set in the west, including the stars of spring, a constellation that comes in like a lion. Well, it is a lion. Leo, the lion. And in the actual sky, the stars of Leo are so big that you very nearly have to turn your head from side to see the whole constellation. The official name for one of 88 star patterns named officially by astronomers in 1930. Well, named long ago, but settled on in 1930. If you look low in the west by these two people who look alike, twins, a sign of the zodiac, you can find the innermost planet, Mercury. Mercury always hugs the sky near the sun. Its orbit is small. It moves around the sun quickly in 88 days, not 365 like the Earth. And if we were to get a pair of binoculars or zoom in with a telescope like this, question, do telescopes zoom? Generally not. Then you might notice a phase on Mercury, just like a phase on the moon. Here, Mercury looks like a thick crescent. The first person to notice this in the first crude telescopes was Galileo Galilei 400 years ago. He drew the phases of Mercury and Venus. The smallest planet, closest to the sun, among the stars of Gemini, the twins. But these stars are rapidly disappearing, and by the middle of the month, they'll be gone. And so you want to look more to the south to really see the stars of the late spring and early summer. Before we do that, let's get oriented, shall we, to the constellations that never rise or set, the ones in the north. Now you notice things are still pretty light at 21:17, 21 hours and 17 minutes, which, you mathematicians in the audience, 21 minus 12, anyone? Anyone? Yep, 9:17 at night. The sky is still pretty bright. Why don't we speed up time a little bit? In Stellarium, you can go faster and faster, like this. We notice the stars spinning. By 22 hours, 22 minus 12, 10 o'clock, 10 p.m., it's a little late for some of you. You want to face north, and you'll see a nice dark sky. If you are at Jenny Jump in Hope, you might see part of the Milky Way. It's that dark. You'll see a letter W low in the sky if you have a view free of trees and houses. Cassiopeia, the queen. Her husband Cepheus, the king, looks to me like a house, roof, the rest of the house. Long constellation above them winds between the two dippers, big and little. And these are part of a constellation in Ursa Major. The two pointer stars in the Great Bear, right? Ursa, Bear, Major, big, great, point about 5 times their distance apart to where the North Star just misses the current location of the North Pole of the Earth. The Earth spins like a top. It has poles like a top. It points in one direction towards Polaris. In the other direction, do we have a South Star, as New Jersey has a North Star? Do people in Australia South America, Antarctica, do they have a South Star? No. Nah. No, they don't. They have a cross that points to the general location of the South Pole. But we have a star that conveniently marks the South Pole. Now, this wasn't always the case. This star, Thuban, was our pole star about 3,000 years ago. And so the Earth's North Pole wanders just as a top wobbles when it starts to run out of energy. The Earth is being pulled on by the Sun, by the Moon, by Jupiter, by the other planets, and its axis through the North and South Poles precesses in a big circle, taking almost 25,000 years. So if you were at the pyramids of Egypt 3,000 years ago and looked right along an edge of the pyramid, it would point here. And now they point here. Can you see the entire Great Bear, the head, the tail, the feet and claws? All right, so you've got to use your imagination. Luckily in Stellarium, they have an imagination button right here. There's a lot of things you can simulate the sky view through a telescope, much that you can do in Stellarium. We've now seen that there are 5 constellations that never rise or set. They're always above the horizon, the boundary between sky and ground in New Jersey. Queen, King, Dragon, Draco, Big and Little Dippers. But if we were to look towards the south, we'd see a lot more interesting things start to happen. Because here in the south, we can find the path of the sun and the moon and the planets. And that's because of a very interesting circumstance in the way that the sun and planets formed billions of years ago. We know that this has happened this way because we can now watch other solar systems forming. And we see them in various stages of formation. And for the first time, we've seen planets around other stars. We've actually got images of them. Amazing. When I was growing up, no one knew what a planet looked like except those in our solar system. And now we have pictures. And so we know that it takes a long time for this stuff to happen. When our solar system formed, it formed as a flat sheet. And you can actually trace the path of the sun and moon and planets in that flat sheet by, well, we can turn on a marking called the ecliptic. The path of the sun through the sky. It goes through the signs of the zodiac: Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpius. Scorpius is just coming up this time of year. It's really properly a summer constellation, but we'll mention that later because there's some interesting things happen when you stay up later. But for those of you who can't, let's just look at the sky for now at about a little past 10 o'clock. Should we go back for you people have to go to bed early? Let's go back. Not too far. Whoa, see, I went too far. So now we're at 21 minus 12, 9:54, just before 10 o'clock. We look up for the Big Dipper's handle, which helps us find other things in the sky. It makes an arc. Oh, one little interesting side tidbit, tidbit? Is that a word? Look at this star here, Mizar, in the bend of the handle, the famous 7 bright stars in the Big Dipper. Now, if you were a Native American keeping watch hundreds of years ago, you would be unlucky to take the first watch if your eyes were sharp enough to see not 7, but 8. Oh. Okay, looks like we're missing a screen, so let me go back.